I have a very diverse background as far as like what I've done, but I think the most important thing is that people are always trying to learn and improve.
I am Judd Lienhard, former Army Ranger, college linebacker. I've been a strength and performance coach for over 15 years. Let's get into it.
I found out that a lot of the methods that elite athletes use can be adapted for the general population. People don't know how to argue. They don't know how to communicate. Instead, we get in these camps where this is the only way and it has to be this way. And there's no other way that can be right. They act like it's a competition all the time. So I always like to say that practice doesn't make perfect, that perfect practice makes perfect. Combat is, people hate on me when I say this, but it's one of the greatest things that mankind does, and it's one of the most horrible things that we do. I get so sick of people using and citing research when they've never done any research. You have your entire life to be a bodybuilder. You only have a small part of your life to where you can be a competitive athlete with what you love to do right now. Don't get caught up in the specifics, like the piece of equipment I'm using. Why do I dislike Optimal? Optimal is heavily context dependent, and it seems like it would be common sense, but I feel like we've lost the ability to use common sense. Okay, I'm going to be changing things up a little bit, and today, instead of my normal monologue, I'm going to have my producer interview me, asking me questions based on questions I commonly and repetitively get asked by people that follow me or interact with my content. And in all candor, I haven't looked at these questions ahead of time, so all of the responses will be completely unrehearsed, like the rest of my life. And I'm kind of trying to look at this screen that you're going to read off, and they look kind of long. So here we go.
Here we go. Okay, they're not long. Well, first off, you're most known on your social channels, Instagram, YouTube, for your fitness program, Mass Method. But in case there are listeners that are not familiar with your social content that just found you through podcast channels, can you talk to that person about your program? What is Mass Method and why did you create it? Who's it for?
Okay, so Mass Method is an acronym. It's an acronym, right?
I think that's what it's called.
Yeah. It stands for movement, athleticism, strength, and speed, which are, four major components of an athlete. And so kind of my motto is always be an athlete. I have a background in both being an athlete and training a lot of elite athletes, but most of those are younger people. And in trying to keep my athleticism as I've aged into middle age now, I've had to adapt my training in order to stay what I consider athletic and even enhance certain aspects of my athleticism. And in doing so, through trial and error and experimentation, I found out that a lot of the methods that elite athletes use and their elite trainers use to develop them can be adapted for the general population. There's been a big gap, I feel like, in the dissemination and application of this information to the general public. And I feel like that information could really help them if they were given access to it. So my mission is to, through this program, Mass Method, is to give them access to that.
A question that you get frequently in the DMs, aside from being propositioned, is what sort of certifications do you have? What sort of formal training do you have? And this comes from all different types of people that follow you. I think some are just kind of interested that are doing your program, that want to understand what's your background. And then there are also a lot of folks that want to start their own career in fitness and are just curious, how did you learn what you know? So aside from, we know that you played college football and you're an Army Ranger, you could talk to personal experience through that, but also what did you study in school? What certifications have you held? And really, what did you get out of them? And maybe what were shortcomings in them as well?
That's a good question. So what is my background and qualifications? Mm-hmm. So, growing up and in high school, I started out as an athlete, a multi-sport athlete, mainly track and football, but experiences in a lot of other sports like a lot of people. And did a lot of things by living in the country that were athletic in nature. It was very common. Fell in love with weightlifting and bodybuilding from an early age. And then in college, I majored and got a degree in exercise science, exercise physiology, got an ACE certification, I believe, and then a CSCS, FMS certifications are my main ones. And then after that, it was just, then I was a personal trainer with those certifications. Then I joined the military, learned a lot in the tactical training side through that experience. And then after that, it was just 20 years of training and experience, and then experimenting and continued education Most of it informal, just reading everything I get my hands on, listening to everything I could find from the experts out there, people that knew more than me. So I have a very diverse background as far as like what I've done. But I think the most important thing is that people are always trying to learn and improve. And I say with pride that I was not nearly as good a trainer 10 years ago as I am today. And I hope that 10 years from now, I will look back and realize that I'm not as good a trainer now as I will be in 10 years. Trainer, coach, and all that. You know, a lot of people, they get out of college with a 4-year degree in the field and they think they know everything. And there's a big gulf between knowing the basic science of physiology and exercise and applying it to the field. And I feel like a lot of these very young people, they get a certification and a degree, and those are just the very basics. You know, I always equate it to like going and getting your ranger tab. That doesn't make you an expert ranger. It's just like the very entry level qualification that you need just to, you know, certify you're not going to kill somebody, basically.
Well, so how important is it to have a degree in exercise science or?
For your career, I think it's pretty important because it gives you those bona fides that employers look for. Especially, I feel like for your career development, it's important to go out and study under people and work for other people at first. Just to see how businesses are run and to appreciate the fact that one day when you're on your own, the freedom that comes with being your own business owner and just getting your foot in the door, it's very important to have a couple certifications under your belt, like nationally recognized ones, and to have a degree in the field. But as far as being a good trainer, in my experience, it's made very little difference.
Can you tell us a little bit about CSCS and like what did you learn from that? What is that? Do you recommend that specific certification?
I do, because it's still the most universally recognized certification. And I won't speak to how good or bad it is out of reverence to them or just respect for them. There's other really good certifications out there. And I don't think
Could you throw out just like a handful of ones that you would recommend to somebody brand new in the industry?
NSCA is a really good one. You know, the National Strength Coach certification is a good one. I feel like that one is a little bit more practical based, like, you know, becoming a practical based coach and trainer rather than just understanding the science of it. I feel like a lot of questions they ask on these, like I'll go back and I'll take these, you know, practice tests every once in a while because I'm bored. And, you know, I just realized that so few of those questions really have any bearing on what I do on a day-to-day basis or help me in my profession at all. I mean, it's interesting information, but it doesn't help me build training programs or anything like that.
So your experience over the last like 10 to 15 years training younger athletes, how has that influenced what you do today and how you created Mass Method, like more so than just the foundational learning?
Mainly in how people progress and how you teach them. With kids, you really have to break things down into their smallest possible component and rehearse the basics over and over again before you try to force speed and intensity. And the importance of consistency and patience and repetition, which then transfers over and is also important to adults, but it just gets amplified with children. You know, patient, slow, steady, simple progression. So I always like to say that practice doesn't make perfect, that perfect practice makes perfect. And what I mean by that, well, people are like, how can you practice something perfect until you get good at it? What I mean by that is you break things down into such small components that you can master those components slowly, and then you stack complexity and speed on top of those gradually, and only progress when you've mastered what has come before that. I feel like we're so impatient to get good at complex things and do it faster that we try to force complexity and speed and do everything at once, where you have to take whatever the task is, break it down into its components, identify those, and slow them down as much as possible, to where things that people look at like a simple pro agility or run or a 5-10-5, we would spend hours and hours and days rehearsing each individual part of those and then blend them together, and then after that start to gradually add speed. So I always say that speed shouldn't be forced. Speed will flow once you get good enough at something. So that was the biggest thing I learned from kids, like how to teach people, and then it helped me build my program.
Yeah, something that I've heard you say that resonated with me is, I think, don't stack speed on top of dysfunction, or
don't stack performance on top of dysfunction.
Okay.
And that's related to that for sure.
Yeah.
But slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Something we'd always say in the military. And I think of that every time. I say that to my son. I just taught him how to ride his bike, and I had him, the mantra is, practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. And what I mean by that with him is to get him to focus on being in the moment and being really good at what I'm telling him to do in that moment, which isn't ride a bike. It's, put more weight on your front leg, when you pedal, or, how to get your pedals positioned just right before you start. So focus on the details.
So you did play college football, you were a linebacker, and you're an Army Ranger. How do you think those experiences shaped what you bring into fitness today and in your training today in Mass Method program?
So for being a linebacker, the biggest thing I took from that, was the thing that I always say, patience, angles, and aggression. So I had it taped to my locker before every game. And at the time, I meant it for playing linebacker. So to be a good linebacker, when the ball is snapped, you have to be patient, because it's hard to be patient in that environment because people are running at you, things get chaotic. It's tempting to just run at the first thing you see or to just jump into the chaos, right? But you have to actually just sit there for a second and let the play develop and see what's actually happened. So let things develop first, and speed flows. So the more experience you have, the faster you'll be able to recognize things. And then the second aspect to that is angle. So as a linebacker, it's crucial that we take the right angle, either scraping over the top, playing the inside hip, running through the inside shoulder, staying tight to your gap. It's all about angles. So the best linebackers take the best angles. But in order to take the best angle, you have to be patient enough to see what angle you need to take to begin with. And then the last piece to that is aggression, because you could do the first two things perfectly, but if you don't finish the play with aggression, run through the ball carrier, run through the block, blow shed aggressively, bad things will still happen. So you could see it perfectly, be in the perfect spot, but if you don't finish it, bad things will still happen. And then I learned that I could employ that to other aspects of my life. Patience, let things develop, see what's happening, take the right approach, and then follow through. So that's the biggest thing I think I learned from playing linebacker. Being a Ranger, the biggest thing was just, it would be, resiliency, accountability, and gratitude. I was just surrounded by people that were way better at their job than me and were truly impressive. And I wasn't prepared to be in that unit when I first got there. And I really had to eat a slice of humble pie and be resilient enough to stick with it, take accountability for my shortcomings, and then be grateful for the gifts I was given and the chance, to be there to begin with. I feel like the Rangers did a lot more for me than I did for them. And I say that without any kind of shame. I'm proud that I was a Ranger, but they definitely did a lot to develop me, and I saw what true professionalism looks like, and it helped me a lot later in life.
You've been pretty open about your struggles post-military with PTSD and just the experience of being in combat, and that has played on you. Is there something outside of combat that you feel like somebody should know who's considering going into the military or who wants to be a Ranger, just about a hardship about just the day-to-day life of being in the military and how that feels?
So what would I tell somebody that's considering going into the military? Yeah. The first thing you have to ask yourself what your motives are. And certain motives that I see that get people to join the military are they think there's a cool factor to it. They think it'll give them some bona fides or this tough guy persona or something like that. Or, they think that it'll help them with their career, things like that. And my advice to them was unless you really want to serve, don't do it. Because things aren't going to go your way. There's going to be things that you see that could really negatively affect you the rest of your life. You could get seriously wounded, traumatized, or killed, and which we all know, but I think young people don't think about those things. So unless you really want to serve your country, you really want to do something greater than yourself, and you don't just do it because they'll think, you think it'll turn you to a man or toughen you up or build discipline, then there's other ways to serve or to live a life. But the military can do a lot of great things for people, but like anything else, combat people hate on me when I say this, but it's one of the greatest things that mankind does, and it's one of the most horrible things that we do. Because, when things are really, really bad and really, really horrible, it also brings out the most beautiful part in men as far as camaraderie and sacrifice. And I've seen some of the most beautiful things in combat zones, and I've also seen some of the most horrendous things. So it brings out the best and the worst in this world. Unless you're willing to see that, don't do it.
What about your time in college playing football? You played at Truman State.
Go Dogs.
I went to LSU, where football players are highly revered. So I imagine it's just a good experience. Is there something surprising about playing college football that people wouldn't expect in terms of the experience?
Well, I went to a Division II school, and it was a academically oriented institution. So they call themselves the Harvard of the Midwest, which is pretty funny to me. So football players there were not revered. We were not given special treatment. And as a matter of fact, if anything, it felt like the professors were kind of biased against us because they had a negative stereotype in their mind what football players were. The student body at Truman State really did not give a crap about the football players. When I was there, they thought we were meatheads too. But compared to other athletes, collegiate athletes, like the Truman football players are some of the most well-rounded, articulate, intelligent individuals that I've been around. And, a lot of them went on to be doctors and lawyers and successful business people. So I might have had an atypical college experience, The biggest thing about college football is the speed of the game increases, but the level of preparation and the hours of dedication that it takes greatly increases. When I was in high school, it was very physically demanding. So, we had 2-a-days and we'd hit all the time. In college, it wasn't always as physically demanding, but you were there all the time. So it is a full-time job to have a football scholarship. The practices are several hours long. There's lots of film work required. There's lots of rehab because you start to get injured that you have to show up early at the training room. The weight sessions and the winter conditioning and things like that get long. So it's a lot of time and commitment. But there's a brotherhood there that I wouldn't have traded for the world.
So what is something that you feel like training young athletes that are pursuing, college sports careers or scholarships? What are they pursuing?
I don't know. Getting laid? I don't know. Whatever young man pursues.
What do you feel like they are the most blind to, I guess, when they come to you when you're training a young athlete? What, aside from just technical skill, what are you trying to instill in them?
What do I try to instill in my young athletes before they go to college? Mm-hmm. The 3 big ones: accountability, resiliency, and gratitude. And every person I train, especially young people, especially in college, that when you're on your own, there's a lot of independence that comes with that. So there has to be a lot of resiliency because you're going to have some major setbacks in that part of your life that you're going to have to overcome, both physical injuries, failing a class. Some people get expelled or they get their scholarships taken away from them. Accountability. So you have to own up to your shortcomings. You have to take a critical look at where you're at and own it in order to improve. And then gratitude for the position you've been put in. And you have an obligation to live up to the people that helped you and believed in you to that point and moving forward are the big 3 ones. There's a lot of freedom in college, and a lot of kids just aren't ready to handle that freedom. So, I try to instill in the fact that, how important it is that they surround themselves with the right people, especially when they get away from home and you're not surrounded by your parents all the time that can't help guide you. You get a lot more freedom to choose your friends and choose your environment. And that is extremely important. And then how quickly bad things can happen in that environment. A lot of the alcohol and drug use in unsupervised environments, they've already been exposed to in high school to some extent. And the needs and the demands to study will greatly increase in college, and how those 2 things don't always go well together.
How did you decide to focus on younger athletes at the last 10 years of your career? It seems like a lot of people feel like all of the glory is in training at the professional level or college, but it seems like you've learned a lot from younger athletes. How did you take that path?
Why did I decide to focus on younger athletes? Well, I didn't. So it's one of those things where it was kind of thrust upon me a little bit. So I decided to come out here and work for Acceleration. It was just one guy at first, so I was the second person there. And I didn't realize when I signed up how young the athletes were going to be. I was picturing high school and college level.
Were you pissed?
At first, it was a little difficult. I mean, I had just gotten out of the military a couple years prior. I was used to working with, mature individuals. So when I have a 9-year-old kid staring at me with snot coming out of his nose that doesn't want to be there, they can't put one foot in front of the other. I'm like, what am I doing, you know? But it's like most things in life, the things that we think are our curses or our misfortunes turn out to be our blessings. And it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me, because not only did it help develop me, like I spoke to earlier, to where I am now, seeing these kids develop and getting to form bonds with them, and getting to actually develop them into athletes instead of just taking somebody that's already at a high level, just like trying to keep them healthy or try to get them into the next round of the draft. And those opportunities did present themselves at Acceleration down the road. A lot of them were the kids that we train, that snot-nosed kid that turned into a Division I football player or a pro athlete and was getting ready for the NFL draft. Just the gift to be able to longitudinally be there and assist in these kids' development as they turn into men was something that I am internally grateful for.
Who are 3 of your biggest influences in the fitness world today in terms of just people that you would like to follow, that you really trust their advice?
Well, in the fitness world, Bert Storen is a big one. He's in the fitness world, and he knows an incredible amount about fitness, but he's the owner and CEO of Sornex, and his knowledge in the business realm and his mentorship as far as fostering relationships that he shared with me, and just watching how he goes about his daily business has been a huge impact for me. Other people that, I really look up to, it's kind of random, but like Brett Contreras. So he's known as the glute guy, but he just how he approaches it. So he has a background, he has a PhD, he has a background in research science, but the way he conveys and relays the information and is very succinct and clear and simple. He's really able to reach people in a level that they can understand, which is really rare. And then Andy Galpin is another person that I like and follow for the same reasons. Extensive education background, one of the foremost in his field, big research background as well, but can convey complicated topics in a simple way that people can understand.
What is the grievance that you have with the fitness world in social media?
What's a
today?
grievance?
Just limit it to one.
One? Oh, God. The freaking way people argue drives me nuts. They can't debate things properly. And it's okay and it's good to disagree. Like, things are driven forward by disagreements. Like, arguing is a good thing. People don't know how to argue. They don't know how to communicate. They focus on the wrong things. They become dogmatic and get in these camps. They act like it's a competition all the time. This is still under one grievance, by the way.
I think you're at like 6.
So it just creates these camps and this animosity where it's like should have a goal. Social media should be a great thing, and there's parts of it that are a great thing to, help people and encourage people to stay fit and active and develop their athleticism. And that can be done in several different ways, and people have different loves and priorities, and all of that's great. I myself, I love to bodybuild and power lift and do, animal flows and a lot of different things that seem contradictory. And all of those things can work together to benefit me overall, or at least enhance my conception of fitness, and give me more tools to put in my box and become more adaptable. Instead, we get in these camps where this is the only way and it has to be this way and there's no other way that can be right. And what's fucking optimal? I hate that word optimal. It gets thrown out all the time. And they use this research that they don't even read or understand fully, that they didn't get firsthand, or maybe they read the abstract too. I get so sick of people using and citing research that saying they've done the research when they've never done any research. I myself have done very little research, especially since college. So it's like, but I can say I've at least read the research, and people, they don't even read the research papers and they don't understand the nature of science. So they think studies can prove things or are conclusive. That's not how science works. And so they just misinterpret studies because they get it relayed to them like a game of telephone, second and third hand. And when you go and read the original study, more often than not, it's not even what the study was talking about. There was all kinds of limitations in the study, which the study, part of reading a study, if you learn how to read scientific literature, there's different parts of it. There's an abstract, there's the methods, there's the results, there's the discussion, there's the limitations. So they'll discuss in that study the limitations to the study. And some of the limitations are profound, so profound in the fact that like the amount of information we can extrapolate from that study is very limited because the limitations were so great, you know?
Well, but you also mentioned that you really dislike the word optimal. Can you elaborate on your feelings about
dislike
optimal?
Optimal. Why do I dislike optimal? Because optimal is heavily context dependent, and we can never fully know what optimal is. We can suspect what's close to optimal, but we don't really know. So what do I mean by context dependent? So this should be self-explanatory, but I think people, they kind of, their eyes gloss over when I say context dependent. It depends on the context. So what's the context? Well, what is the athlete's needs? What are the athlete's limitations? What are the athletes, what's the athlete's level? What's their time? What equipment do they have? What's their recovery status? What's their nutrition status? So like, that's what I mean by context. There are so many things that have to be taken into context to determine what optimal is. Instead, we should just do generally accepted best practices and accept human preference and human accessibility as part of that best practices. So what is a best practice has a lot to do on what that person has at their disposal, the time they have, the tools they have, the knowledge they have, their injuries they have to work around, and also what do they enjoy doing. So I get so tired of people, they'll see an exercise I do and they're like, well, that's not optimal. Well, it's more optimal for me because I have a bad left shoulder. And if I did what's optimal for you, that would not be optimal for me. And it seems like it would be common sense, but I feel like we've lost the ability to use common sense. I do better with grievances than anything else.
Do you want to keep going?
I do. That'll be a grievance I have from this interview, is that we didn't talk about grievances more.
Anything you want to add before we leave grievances?
Have you ever seen the show Family Guy at all?
A little bit.
Peter, he did the thing like, what was his thing? He had a show, really grinds my gears. That was his thing. So whenever I start talking about grievances, I feel like I'm Peter from Family Guy. I'm like, he really grinds my gears.
Okay, well, if we are going to move on, somebody who just recently discovered you and discovered your content, and they are just starting out in their fitness journey, or even just coming back to it. So a lot of the people that follow your content are maybe midlife, maybe used to consider themselves an athlete and sort of lost some of that athleticism. They're trying to regain it. What is your best advice to them?
What's my best advice to somebody that is either trying to regain or develop their athleticism?
Mm-hmm.
Start slow and simple, using best practices. So if they look at my content, they're going to see a lot of complicated or unfamiliar exercises. And I always try to tell people to look through things and see the essence of it. I'm not telling you have to do these exercises. My exercises are people that have been working out for a long time, mostly, and either can't do things they used to do because of injuries or want to try new things. But look through. Don't get caught up in the specifics, like the piece of equipment I'm using or one little thing I'm doing with my foot or something like that. And look what I'm trying to accomplish by what I'm doing, and maybe even read the caption, because a lot of times I'll explain it. So a lot of the back to grievances, a lot of the issues I have are people that are non-readers. They don't read the caption because I'll explain what I mean.
Okay.
So look through things to see the essence of what I'm doing. And I commit a lot of my social media time to trying to get to the essence of things and get to really matter. So really look for those posts. Like, what are the basics? What really matter? What you should spend most of your time doing? What's not a big deal and what is? So just try to get your general practices down first, and don't get caught up in the details, and don't listen to the optimal people, because they might not be speaking to what's actually optimal for you. And just because something may not be quote unquote optimal doesn't mean it still won't work for you.
Okay. Noted.
Was that a grievance?
Okay. Jumping around a little bit, I want to go back to, and really just kind of close it out with this last question. This is a more of a personal question. If you could go back and give 25-year-old Judd 3 pieces of life advice, what would they be?
Oh my God. 3 pieces?
3 pieces. So we can even categorize. Let's do like a health and fitness piece of advice, like a wealth/career piece of advice, like a love/relationship piece of advice.
First of all, I'd slap him. Slap him really hard. And then I'd like pinch his nose. All right. So, okay. Fitness advice would be, well, I'm going to back up the age a little bit because I'm going to go to like college age. When I was still a competitive athlete, I loved bodybuilding, right? And this is what I tell a lot of the kids I train that also love bodybuilding. You have your entire life to be a bodybuilder. You only have a small part of your life a lot of times to where you can be a competitive athlete with what you love to do right now, whether that be basketball or football. And I got it. People can go out and they can join football leagues and they can join rec basketball league, and that's great, right? But I'm talking about like college basketball or college football to where you can achieve a high level of something, right? Focus on being an athlete at that age rather than a bodybuilder. Focus on your performance at that age and learning how to move correctly rather than just pushing a lot of weight, getting a big bench press, getting big muscles. You have your whole life, which is very long after the age of 22, to get a big bench press and get big muscles. You're going to stop being able. I remember the last time I put on my shoulder pads, it didn't really dawn on me until I took them off. And I'm like, man, I will never get to put on a set of shoulder pads again. And that was a pretty hard moment. And I was still really young. Okay, so that's my athletic advice. Business and financial advice. Okay. Delay gratification and save early. Like start to make investments early and start, have a vision board. I know it sounds cheesy, but start to kind of picture out what you want your life to be and look like early and start to put the pieces in place so that can happen. And I always tell kids that are at that age, like you don't have to walk through any doors at this age. Just don't close any doors yet, right? So if you think you might want to be a doctor, you might want to go to med school, understand the basic requirements to get into a good med school and make sure that like your GPA or your study habits don't close any of those doors. Make sure that something doesn't happen, with your recreational life that's going to result in a criminal record that will close doors. Because a lot of doors get closed when kids are really young. And, sure, it's unfair, but it happens. And it sets their life on a trajectory. And then, if you want to be a business owner, like start to associate with people in the business realm and start to learn and humble yourself and, ask the right questions and listen in order, because your people want to help other people, especially young men and women. They want to help those people out. So if you express the desire to want to learn and humble yourself and go and put out a lot of effort, people will help you and they'll teach you at that age. So you have to start to immerse yourself in these environments in positions that aren't necessarily, highly respected or make a lot of money, but will teach you and give you the tools you'll need down the road. I feel like it's a little bit different now. Kids get out and they want to make a lot of money, get a lot of respect, have a personal brand, which is just insane to me that like we didn't even know what personal brands were when I was that age. Instead of wanting to learn and develop skills and actually, develop something that could be a personal brand one day. So that'd be my advice there. And relationship wise, every reason that you're dating the person you're dating now is probably not going to be the reason you're with them in the long run. So just keep that in mind, that family matters, your morals and your values should align, that things that don't seem like they're a big deal right now, like your faith and, your beliefs in right and wrong are really going to matter down the road. And just because somebody like looks good or is fun or has a lot of money, that doesn't mean that they're going to be a good long-term partner for you. They really have to be like your friend, somebody you trust, somebody you respect, and somebody that shares the bigger, deeper values in life. And it's important that you have those discussions with them if you're going to consider getting into a serious relationship.
All right.
Nothing else I can complain about? We're going to end it on that?
One final grievance for the crowd.
Well, I get a prompt. I don't even know. I have so many.
Just what's pissing you off right now?
I don't know. Our camera situation.
Yeah. Fair.
People that work for you.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will wrap up with that. We might do a part 2. Who knows?
Sweet.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.